The inheritance was supposed to arrive on our 3rd anniversary. Instead, I woke up in a hospital with no memory of the previous 48 hours and my husband's lawyer standing over my bed, demanding I sign papers I couldn't read through the fog in my brain. The Ashford family had one rule: never enter the West Wing after sunset. I'd obeyed for 2 years, like the good wife they'd trained me to be, but 3 weeks ago, I broke it. What I found in those forbidden rooms explained why none of Xavier's previous wives lived to see their 4th year of marriage. The detective sitting outside my room believes it was a suicide attempt. Xavier's mother insists it was a mental breakdown, that I've always been fragile. But I remember now. The locked filing cabinets I pried open, the medication schedules with my name at the bottom of a list, the life insurance policies, the photographs of 3 women who all looked eerily like me, each one beautiful and smiling in their wedding photos, each one dead within 3 years. They should have killed me when they had the chance, because now I'm not just running, I'm burning their empire down, starting with the truth. And it all started the night I broke the rule. If you've ever felt like something was wrong but everyone around you insisted you were crazy, keep watching, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust. And if wealthy families manipulating the system makes your blood boil, you're going to want to hear every word of this. I met Xavier Ashford when I was drowning in student debt and serving champagne at a fundraiser gala in Manhattan. I was 26, working 3 jobs to cover my art authentication degree and living in a basement apartment in Queens that flooded every time it rained. He was everything I wasn't: old money, Yale-educated, effortlessly confident in the way only people born into wealth can be. When he asked for my number, I thought he'd misread the situation. Men like him didn't pursue women like me. But he did pursue me. Flowers delivered to the catering company where I worked, texts that were charming without being pushy. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the village, and he spent the whole evening asking about my work, my dreams, my opinions on art forgery techniques. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. Looking back, I realized that was the point. He was studying me, learning what kind of woman would fit their needs. Isolated, hungry for belonging, no family safety net to run to. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. No siblings, no extended family who'd stayed in touch. Xavier discovered all of this on our 3rd date, and his eyes had flickered with something I'd mistaken for compassion. Now, I know it was confirmation. The engagement happened fast. 6 months of dating, then a proposal on a weekend trip to Martha's Vineyard. The ring was vintage, an emerald surrounded by diamonds. It was my grandmother's, he'd said. I learned later it had belonged to wife number 2. They recycled everything in that family, even the women. The wedding was in the Hamptons, 200 guests I'd never met, all of them air-kissing and congratulating Xavier on his lovely bride. His mother Vivien had planned everything. My only job was to show up and look grateful. The dress she selected was beautiful, but not my style. Too modest, too traditional. Ashford wives have a certain elegance to maintain, she'd explained with her porcelain smile. I'd been too flattered by the inclusion to hear the warning. The honeymoon was Monaco, yacht parties and casino nights, and Xavier's hand always on my back, guiding me, positioning me, controlling me in ways so subtle I didn't notice. When we returned to the estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, I felt like Cinderella entering the castle. 20 rooms, staff quarters, stables for horses I didn't know how to ride, and gardens so perfectly manicured they looked artificial. "Let me show you around," Xavier had said that first day, leading me through marble hallways and rooms filled with antiques worth more than my entire education. We toured the main house, the conservatory, the library with first editions behind glass. Then, we approached a corridor in the West Wing, and he stopped. "The family archives are down there." Extremely boring. Financial records, legal documents, that sort of thing. You'd hate it. His tone had been light, dismissive, but his hand on my shoulder had been firm. "Family rule," Vivien had added, appearing behind us like she'd been summoned. "We keep business and pleasure separate. The West Wing is off limits after dark. Disturbs the household to have people wandering about." She'd smiled at me the way you'd smile at a child who needed simple instructions. "You understand, dear." I understood, or thought I did. Rich people were eccentric about their spaces. It seemed reasonable, so I nodded and smiled and never questioned it. That was my first mistake. The first 6 months were perfect. Too perfect, I realize now. Xavier showered me with attention and gifts. Weekend getaways to wine country. Jewelry I'd never have bought for myself. He'd introduce me at parties as my brilliant wife, and beam with pride when I discussed art authentication techniques with his friends. Vivien welcomed me into the family with warmth that felt genuine. She taught me the family traditions, included me in charity board meetings, invited me to her book club. I felt like I'd finally found the belonging I'd craved since my parents died. Then the shifts started. Small things at first. Xavier began tracking my location on his phone. "Manhattan can be dangerous," he'd say. "I just want to make sure you're safe." He'd text throughout the day. "Where are you? Who are you with? When will you be home?" If I didn't respond immediately, he'd call. Multiple times. His voice would be tight with what he called concern, but felt like something else. Vivien started dropping by unannounced with those smoothies. "Family recipe," she'd explain, handing me tall glasses of thick green liquid. "Wonderful for energy and mental clarity." "You've seemed a bit tired lately, dear." The smoothies tasted bitter under the sweetness, like wheatgrass mixed with something medicinal. After drinking them, I'd feel foggy and slow, like my thoughts were moving through honey. But when I mentioned it to Xavier, he'd frown. "You're probably just adjusting to your new lifestyle. It can be exhausting, all this socializing." The housekeeper, Claudia, had been different from the start. She'd watch me with these careful, frightened eyes. One morning, while she was arranging flowers in the dining room, I'd asked about Xavier's first wife. Just casual curiosity. What was she like? Claudia's hands had frozen mid-arrangement. The color drained from her face. "I wouldn't know about that, ma'am," she'd said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "I've only worked here 5 years." Her voice had trembled. She'd hurried out of the room, leaving the flowers half-finished. 2 weeks later, Claudia was gone. "Retired," Vivien explained over breakfast, buttering toast with precise movements. Poor dear was getting on in years. We gave her a very generous severance package. I tried to find her contact information to say goodbye, to thank her for her kindness. But there was nothing in the house records. No forwarding address. No phone number. The new housekeeper didn't know anything about her. It was like Claudia had never existed. I started noticing other strange things. During a garden tour with Vivien, I discovered 3 rose bushes planted in a secluded corner, each one different. One white, one pink, one deep red. Beneath each bush was a small stone marker with a name engraved. Simone, Zara, Odette. "Who are they?" I'd asked. Vivien had smiled that perfect smile. "Dear friends who passed away." I like to memorialize people who mattered to the family, but something about the way she'd said it, the way she'd touched the stone-marked Odette with such satisfaction, had made my skin crawl. By the end of the first year, I was sleeping 12 hours a day and still waking up exhausted. Entire conversations would disappear from my memory. Xavier would reference things I'd supposedly said or done, and I'd have no recollection. I'd wake up in different rooms, the library, the conservatory, once in the garden with no memory of how I'd gotten there. I'd find bruises on my arms and legs that I couldn't explain. When I'd show them to Xavier, concerned, he'd look worried. "You've been so clumsy lately, darling. Maybe you should see someone." Dr. Pemberton was a family friend, Xavier explained. Very discreet, very experienced with the unique pressures of high society life. The psychiatrist's office was all leather chairs and oil paintings, designed to make wealthy people feel comfortable discussing their problems. Dr. Pemberton had been kind, understanding, and completely convinced that I was suffering from adjustment disorder and anxiety. The medications he prescribed were supposed to help. Instead, they made everything worse. And if you think the medication was the worst part, just wait. Comment below if you've ever had a doctor dismiss your concerns, or if someone used medication to control you. Because what I'm about to tell you gets so much darker. The pills were just the beginning. The pills turned the fog in my head into a thick soup. Days blurred into each other. I'd lose hours at a time. I'd start a sentence and forget what I was saying mid-word. Simple tasks became impossible. I couldn't remember if I'd eaten breakfast or taken a shower. Xavier and Vivien watched me with concern that looked real, but felt wrong. "The medication just needs time to work, doctor," Pemberton assured me during our weekly sessions. "Give it a few more weeks." But some survival instinct I didn't know I still possessed kicked in. Maybe it was all those years of scraping by on my own, learning to trust my gut when something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way I'd learned to spot forgeries in my work, how something could look perfect on the surface but have subtle wrongness underneath. Whatever it was, I started paying attention. And once I started looking, really looking, I saw the patterns. The way Xavier's concern always came with control. The way Vivien's kindness always came with those smoothies or reminders to take my medication. The way they'd exchange glances when they thought I wasn't watching, glances that held calculation instead of worry. The locked doors throughout the West Wing that I'd never been given keys to. The whispered phone conversations that would end abruptly when I entered a room. The way everyone performed their roles so perfectly, like actors in a play I hadn't auditioned for. So I started conducting an experiment. I started pretending to take the pills. I'd put them in my mouth, fake the swallow, take a drink of water, smile. Then I'd excuse myself to the bathroom and spit them into a tissue. I hid them at the bottom of the bathroom trash, buried under cotton balls and tissues where no one would look. Within a week, the fog began to lift. My memory started working again. The lost time stopped happening, and with that clarity came observation. I watched them watching me. Vivien's eyes weren't maternal, they were clinical, like a scientist monitoring a lab rat. Xavier's tenderness felt rehearsed, performed, like he'd done this exact routine before. Every touch, every word of concern, every smile felt like lines from a script. The staff moved through the house like ghosts, silent and careful never to engage with me beyond basic pleasantries. The doors to the West Wing remained locked, and when I'd casually mentioned wanting to see the family archives once, Xavier's hand had tightened on my shoulder. "Trust me, darling. Boring legal documents, nothing you'd be interested in." But I was interested. I was very interested, because something was wrong in this perfect house with this perfect family, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to figure out what it was before it was too late. The breakthrough came 3 weeks before our 3rd anniversary. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unseasonably warm for early May. Xavier was in his study on a video conference, arguing about pharmaceutical patents with someone in Geneva. I'd brought him coffee, the kind of wifely gesture Vivien had trained me to perform, with subtle praise and cutting remarks about proper wives when I forgot. He'd waved me in distractedly, barely acknowledging my presence. While he talked about FDA approvals and profit margins, I set the coffee on his desk. That's when I saw it. A folder partially hidden beneath a stack of financial reports, just the edge visible, but enough to see my name typed on the tab. Mallory Winters Ashford. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it. But Xavier was focused on his screen, gesturing emphatically about market shares. I backed out of the study quietly, closing the door with careful silence. But my mind was racing. Why would Xavier have a folder with my name hidden among his business papers? What could possibly be in it that he'd need to keep from me? That night, while Xavier showered before dinner, I slipped back into his study. My hands were shaking so badly I had to brace them against the desk as I pulled out the folder. Inside was a life insurance policy. $2 million. Beneficiary, the Ashford Family Trust. My signature at the bottom of the application form, dated 6 months after our wedding. Except I'd never seen this document before in my life. I would have remembered signing away $2 million to my husband's family. I'd worked in art authentication long enough to recognize forgeries, and this signature was close, very close, but not quite right. The pen pressure was different. The loop of my lowercase y was slightly off. Someone had copied my signature, probably from our marriage license or one of the estate documents I'd actually signed, and forged it onto this policy. My hands were trembling as I pulled out my phone and photographed every page. The policy details, the beneficiary information, the forged signature. I had to stop twice because my hands were shaking too badly to hold the phone steady. Then I carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it, made sure the folder was positioned at precisely the same angle, and left the study. I made it to our bedroom and straight into the bathroom before I vomited. Crouched on the marble floor, hand over my mouth to muffle the sound, my mind was spinning. Life insurance. Forged signature. Beneficiaries who weren't me. This wasn't estate planning. This wasn't protecting our future. This was something else entirely. Something that explained the smoothies, the medications, the fog in my head, the memory loss. They were preparing for my death. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Xavier, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the weight of his arm across my waist like a prison. And I pulled out my phone under the covers, brightness turned all the way down, and started searching. Simone Keller, first wife of Xavier Ashford. The obituary was from 6 years ago. Died tragically in her home, age 29. Preceded in death by her parents, no surviving family. Memorial service private. I had to read the date 3 times before it sank in. She died 3 weeks before what would have been their 3rd anniversary. Zara Patil, second wife. Obituary from 4 years ago. Accidental overdose, age 27. Survived by distant cousins in London who could not be reached for comment. The date of death was 11 days before her 3rd anniversary. I couldn't find anything on Odette Marchand at first. But when I added Ashford to the search, a small death notice appeared. Passed peacefully at home, age 28. Private burial at family's request. The date made my blood run cold. She died on what would have been her 3rd anniversary. Exactly. 3 wives, all dead within weeks of their 3rd anniversary. All young, I realized as I frantically searched for their photos, sharing certain characteristics. Dark hair, petite build. And from what I could piece together from old social media profiles and news articles, all from working class backgrounds. All orphaned or estranged from their families. All isolated, all vulnerable, all looking remarkably like me. I ran to the bathroom and vomited again, pressing my hand over my mouth to muffle the sound. When I came back, Xavier had rolled over in his sleep, his arm reaching out as if searching for me. I climbed back into bed and lay there rigid, staring at the ceiling, my mind cataloging everything with terrible clarity. The smoothies that made me foggy, the medications that erased my memory, the concerned psychiatrist who was a family friend, the previous wives buried in the garden under memorial rose bushes, the life insurance policy I'd never signed, the 3rd anniversary that was 3 weeks away. They were going to kill me, just like they'd killed Simone, Zara, and Odette. And they were going to make it look like an accident or suicide or natural causes, collect the $2 million, and probably start looking for wife number 5 within a year. Hit subscribe right now, because what I found when I broke into that forbidden West Wing will make your blood run cold. And if you've been watching this whole time without subscribing, this is your sign. You need to see how I made it out of this alive. Trust me, the next part is going to leave you speechless. The next morning, I smiled through breakfast like nothing had changed. I drank the smoothie Vivien prepared thick and green and bitter, then excused myself to the guest bathroom and vomited it up as quietly as possible. I took my morning medication from the pill organizer Vivien kept filled, palmed the tablets, and flushed them down the toilet when no one was watching. I kissed Xavier goodbye when he left for his office in the city, waved from the doorway like the perfect wife, then went back inside and locked myself in our bedroom. I couldn't just run. That was my first instinct, pack a bag and disappear. But I'd learned enough about the Ashford family to know they had resources I couldn't match. Xavier had connections in law enforcement, private investigators on retainer, lawyers who could freeze my accounts, and have me declared mentally incompetent before I made it out of Connecticut. And without proof of what they'd done, I'd look exactly like what they'd been setting me up to be, an unstable wife having a paranoid breakdown. Dr. Pemberton's records would document my deteriorating mental state. The staff would testify that I'd been acting erratically, forgetting things, seeming confused. Xavier's concerned husband act would be completely convincing. They'd have me committed to some private facility, probably one they owned, where I'd be medicated into compliance and eventually have my tragic accident in a locked psychiatric ward where no one would ask questions. No, running wasn't enough. I needed evidence, real evidence, the kind that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as the fantasies of a delusional woman, and I knew exactly where to find it. The West Wing, the family archives that were supposedly just boring financial records, the place I'd been forbidden to enter after dark. The place they'd made a point of keeping locked and off limits from the moment I'd moved into this house. I spent a week preparing. I used my shopping trips to town, supervised by a driver who reported back to Vivien. I'd realized to stop at the library. I researched lockpicking on public computers, cleared the browser history, learned the basics of pin and tumbler locks. At a hardware store 3 towns over, paid in cash, I bought a small lockpick set disguised as a credit card. At an electronics store, I bought a pen camera and a portable battery pack. I practiced on the locked drawers in the guest bedrooms when everyone was out, fumbling with the picks until my fingers learned the feel of pins clicking into place. I set up a cloud storage account under a fake name, using a library computer and an email address that had nothing to do with me. I programmed delayed send emails to 3 addresses: Isla Reeves, Xavier's younger sister who I'd noticed always looked uncomfortable at family gatherings, a journalist named Kira Ivanova who'd written extensively about white-collar crime and insurance fraud, and an old friend from law school who'd told me years ago that if I ever needed help, no matter what, to call. Then I waited for my opportunity, the annual Ashford Foundation Charity Gala. It was the biggest event of the year for the family, held at the Metropolitan Club in Manhattan. Xavier and Vivien would both be there all evening, giving speeches and schmoozing donors and playing the philanthropic elite. The Skeleton Night staff would be focused on the main house. And I would finally break the rule. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonably cold weather, rain threatening. I helped Xavier with his cufflinks platinum, engraved with the Ashford family crest, and straightened his bow tie. "You look handsome," I said, and meant it. He was handsome. That was part of what made this so horrible. He kissed my forehead. "Wish you were coming with us." I know. I'm sorry. I'd spent the last 3 days building up to this, complaining of worsening headaches, mentioning sensitivity to light, wincing at loud sounds. I just don't think I could make it through the evening without being sick. You understand. Vivien appeared in the doorway in a silver gown that probably cost more than my college education. She frowned, and I could see her calculating. "The family is expected to present a united front, dear. Perhaps if you took an extra dose of your medication—" "No," I said quickly, then softened it. "I mean, I don't want to be drowsy on top of everything else. I'd just embarrass you both. Please. I'll rest here, and I'll be fine for the anniversary party next week." The anniversary party, my execution date, though they didn't know I knew that. Vivien studied me with those ice blue eyes, and for a moment I was terrified she could see through me, could tell I was planning something. But then she nodded. "Very well. Rest then. We'll make your apologies to the board." Translation: don't embarrass us. I watched from the upstairs window as their car pulled away, taillights disappearing down the long driveway through the early evening gloom. Then I waited. 1 hour. 2. Making sure they were truly gone, that this wasn't some kind of test. At 9 o'clock exactly, I made my move. The West Wing hallway felt different at night, darker than the rest of the house despite the emergency exit signs casting everything in dim red light. Colder too, like the heating didn't quite reach this far. My hands were sweating as I approached the first locked door, the lockpick set feeling foreign and clumsy in my trembling fingers. It took me 20 minutes to get the first lock open. 20 minutes of my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, certain that at any moment someone would hear me, investigate, catch me. The small scraping sounds of metal on metal seemed impossibly loud in the silence. But finally, I felt the pins align and the lock click open. The door swung inward to reveal a storage room filled with furniture covered in white sheets. Old couches and chairs and rolled-up Persian rugs. Nothing sinister. Nothing suspicious. Just the archives Xavier had described. I actually laughed, a small sound of relief mixed with disappointment. Maybe I really was paranoid. Maybe the stress and the medications had made me see conspiracies where there were none. Then I noticed the door at the back of the storage room, also locked, and this lock was newer, more sophisticated. This lock, unlike the hallway door, was meant to keep people out. My hands were steadier now, muscle memory from my practice sessions taking over. This lock took less time, 10 minutes instead of 20. And when the door swung open, when I stepped inside and turned on my small flashlight, everything changed. It was an office, not a storage room, not archives. An actual working office with a desk, filing cabinets, and a wall covered in photographs. I closed the door behind me and let the beam of my flashlight sweep across the room. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The wall was covered with photographs of women, dozens of them. Professional headshots, candid photos that looked like they'd been taken from social media, surveillance shots that were definitely taken without the subjects knowing, and among the faces, I recognized 3. Simone, blonde and laughing at what looked like an outdoor summer party. Zara, dark-eyed and shy smiling, standing outside a university building. Odette, red-haired and elegant, at an art gallery opening. Below each of their photos, someone had drawn a red X, like items on a shopping list that had been purchased, like tasks on a to-do list that had been completed. My photo was there too, the professional headshot from the catering company website from before I'd ever met Xavier. Someone had found it online, printed it out, and pinned it to this wall. No red X yet, but below my picture, in Vivien's precise handwriting, were 2 dates. Initiated, June 2021. Completion, June 2024. June 2024. 3 weeks from now, our 3rd anniversary. I stood there frozen, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't speculation or paranoia or medication-induced delusion. This was real. This was evidence. This was a system, a pattern, a deliberate and methodical operation. They'd selected me just like they'd selected the others. They'd studied me, pursued me, married me. And now they were planning to complete me. The filing cabinets held worse. I forced the locks open with the picks, my hands shaking again, but working through it. Inside, I found medical records. Not just mine, all 4 of us. Simone's toxicology reports showing graduated doses of benzodiazepines in the months before her death, levels that would have left her barely functional. Zara's psychiatric evaluations documenting erratic behavior, paranoid delusions, emotional instability, all the groundwork for explaining away her eventual death. Odette's prescription history, a cocktail of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, and sleeping pills that would have made her a zombie. And my own records, current and ongoing. Dr. Pemberton's notes describing my deteriorating mental state. Prescription schedules showing steadily increasing dosages. Notes about resistance to treatment and potential danger to self. They were building my narrative, creating the story that would explain my death to anyone who bothered to ask. The death certificates were there too, filed neatly. Simone, acute respiratory failure. Zara, accidental overdose of prescribed medications. Odette, fall downstairs resulting in head trauma. All ruled accidental or natural causes. All investigated by the same medical examiner doctor, Howard Finch, who I noted from other documents in the files was on the Ashford Foundation board. All bodies cremated quickly, within 48 hours, no autopsy performed. And all 3 had life insurance policies identical to mine, $2 million each. Beneficiary, the Ashford Family Trust. All signed, or rather, forged by women who had no idea they were worth more dead than alive. In a separate folder, I found the financial records that explained everything. Insurance payouts, $2 million per wife, $6 million total. The money flowing into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, then distributed through a complex web of shell companies and trusts. They weren't just killing wives, they were profiting from it. A systematic harvest of vulnerable women, selected specifically because no one would fight for them, no one would ask difficult questions, no one would demand answers when they died young and tragic. I photographed everything, every document, every photo, every page of medical records. My hands were steadier now, running on pure adrenaline and rage. The pen camera captured what my phone couldn't. I worked methodically, forcing myself to be thorough even as my mind was screaming at me to run, get out, escape while I still could. That's when I found Isla's notes. They were hidden in the very back of the bottom drawer, folded small and shoved behind the hanging files. Letters written but never sent. Confessions that had never been made. I tried to warn Zara, one read, the handwriting hurried and shaky. I told her not to drink the smoothies Mother made. I told her to check her medications, to get a second opinion, to run while she still could. But she didn't believe me. She said I was jealous, trying to cause problems in her marriage. 2 weeks later, she was dead, and I just stood at her memorial service and said nothing. I can't do this anymore. I can't watch them kill another one. Another note, dated a year later. Talk to the housekeeper. Claudia, she knows. She was here when Simone died, saw the whole thing. But they paid her off, threatened her family. She's too scared to go to the police. And honestly, so am I. I watched what happened to cousin Theo when he threatened to expose father's business dealings. Suicide, they said. Jumped from his apartment balcony. Theo was terrified of heights. This family protects itself. This family destroys anything that threatens it. The most recent note was dated just 3 months ago. Xavier brought home a new wife today, Mallory. She seems sweet, smart. She works in art authentication, which is ironic because she can't see the forgery she's living inside. I want to warn her. I want to help her. But how do I do that without proof? How do I tell her my family is planning to murder her without sounding insane? God help me, I'm a coward. I'm going to watch this happen again and do nothing because I'm too afraid to be the next one who commits suicide. I was standing there, reading Isla's guilt and fear and self-loathing, when I heard it. The sound that would haunt my nightmares. A car engine. Headlights sweeping across the windows, cutting through the darkness of the storage room beyond. They were home, early, hours before the gala should have ended. Panic seized me like a physical force. I frantically shoved the folders back into the filing cabinets, closed the drawers, checked that everything looked undisturbed. The photographs on the wall, I couldn't do anything about. There wasn't time. I just had to hope they wouldn't notice any change, wouldn't realize someone had been here. I turned off my flashlight, stumbled through the darkness to the door, my hands fumbling with the lockpicks. My fingers wouldn't work properly. I dropped the picks once, had to feel around on the floor to find them, precious seconds ticking away. Finally, the lock clicked. I slipped through, pulled the door closed behind me, stumbled through the storage room. Behind me, below me, I could hear voices. Vivien's laugh, artificially bright and sharp as broken glass. Xavier's deeper voice responding, the beep of the security alarm being disarmed and reset. I made it to the main staircase, forced myself not to run, started up toward our bedroom with what I hoped looked like casual slowness. That's when Xavier's voice stopped me, freezing me mid-step like a spotlight catching a thief. "Mallory, what are you doing up?" I turned, and I knew everything depended on the next few seconds, on whether I could sell this performance, on whether years of watching them pretend had taught me enough about lying. Xavier stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, still in his tuxedo, bow tie loosened. Behind him, Vivien watched from the entrance to the sitting room, her silver gown gleaming, her eyes calculating. "My headache got better," I said, letting relief color my voice. "I came down for some water. I didn't expect you back so soon. How was the gala?" I started down toward them, playing the concerned wife, the normal wife, the wife who hadn't just spent the last hour discovering her husband was planning her murder. Xavier studied me, and I could see him cataloging details. My clothes casual, the yoga pants and sweater I'd changed into after they left. My hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. My face flushed from exertion and fear that I desperately hoped he'd read as embarrassment at being caught wandering the house. "It was excellent," he said slowly. "We raised quite a bit for the foundation. Storm warning came through, though. They decided to end early rather than have everyone driving in dangerous weather." "Oh, well, I'm glad you're home safe." I continued down the stairs, and when I reached him, I let him pull me into a hug. Stood there in his arms, breathing in his expensive cologne, feeling the solid warmth of his body, knowing that this man who was holding me like he cared, was planning to kill me in less than 3 weeks. His hand caught my wrist as I tried to pull away. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. His thumb found my pulse point, pressed just slightly. "You're sure you're feeling better? Your heart is racing." "Just startled by you both being home," I managed. I wasn't expecting anyone. His eyes held mine. Dark brown eyes that had seemed so warm when we first met, so full of intelligence and humor. Now they were flat, cold, measuring. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you? If you were worried about something?" The question hung between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't supposed to understand. But I did understand. I understood perfectly. This was a test. They suspected something. Maybe they had cameras in the West Wing I hadn't noticed. Maybe the door hadn't locked perfectly. Maybe I'd left some trace, some disturbance they detected. Or maybe this was just Xavier's way, constantly testing, constantly checking, making sure his victim stayed properly controlled. "Of course I'd tell you," I said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "But everything's fine. I promise. Just a headache that went away. I'm actually feeling much better now." He held my gaze for another long moment. I could feel Vivien watching from behind him, could feel the weight of their combined scrutiny. Then Xavier smiled, that charming smile that had first attracted me to him, and released my wrist. "Good. I'm glad. You should get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Mother has final anniversary party planning." can't wait, I said, smiling back, performing just as well as he was. I climbed the rest of the stairs on legs that felt like water, certain they could hear my heart hammering, certain they knew. In our bedroom, I went straight to the bathroom and vomited as quietly as possible, running the faucet to cover the sound. Then I buried the pen camera deep in my makeup bag, hid my phone in an empty tampon box where Xavier would never think to look, and climbed into bed. When Xavier came up an hour later, I pretended to be asleep. I felt him stand beside the bed for a long time, just watching me. My eyes were closed, my breathing careful and even, but every muscle in my body was screaming with the effort of staying still and relaxed. Finally, I heard him move to the bathroom. The shower ran. When he climbed into bed beside me, he pulled me close, his arm heavy across my waist, his breath warm on my neck. "Sweet dreams, darling," he whispered into my hair. I lay there in the darkness, in the arms of a man who was planning to kill me, and started planning my next move. Because now I had evidence. Now I had proof. Now I just had to survive long enough to use it. The next 72 hours were the longest and most dangerous of my life. I had to act completely normal while knowing what I knew. Had to smile and chat and play the loving wife while my mind was screaming the truth. Every gesture had to be genuine. Every conversation had to be natural. One wrong move, one slip that revealed I knew what they were planning, and they'd accelerate the timeline. I'd end up like the others before I could get the evidence to anyone who mattered. The morning after my West Wing discovery, I woke to find Xavier already dressed, sitting in the bedroom armchair watching me sleep. Not reading, not checking his phone. Just watching. "Good morning," he said, his voice too cheerful. "Sleep well?" "Very well." I lied, sitting up. I'd barely slept at all, my mind racing through scenarios and plans. "Good. Mother wants you to join her for lunch today. She has some final anniversary party ideas to discuss." He stood, buttoned his suit jacket. "I think you'll love what she's planned. Very intimate. Very special. Anniversary. 3 weeks away. My completion date. The day they'd been planning since before they even met me." "That sounds lovely," I managed, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Lunch with Vivien was psychological warfare disguised as wedding planning. She'd set it up in the conservatory, surrounded by her perfect roses, and spent 2 hours describing the intimate celebration she was orchestrating. "Just close family," she said, pouring tea I didn't touch. "Xavier's father is flying in from Switzerland. Isla will be there, of course. We'll have all your favorite foods." She smiled warmly, like we were the closest of friends, like she hadn't spent 2 years systematically poisoning me. "And I've arranged for a photographer," she continued, showing me sample portraits on her tablet. "Professional family portraits of you and Xavier, for the gallery wall." She gestured to the wall behind her desk, and I saw them. Simone in white, smiling radiantly beside a younger Xavier. Zara in cream silk, looking shy but happy. Odette in ivory lace, elegant and beautiful. Each one a memorial photo, though they didn't know it when the pictures were taken. "We'll hang yours right there," Vivien said, pointing to an empty space on the wall between Odette and an antique mirror. "A beautiful tribute to your marriage." A memorial, she meant. The portrait they'd display after I was gone, proof of what a lovely wife I'd been, how tragic my untimely death had been. I felt bile rise in my throat but smiled through it. I can't wait. That afternoon, I tried to run. I had to try. I made it to the garage, car keys in hand, small bag packed with the evidence and essentials. But when I turned the key in my car's ignition, nothing happened. Dead battery. Impossible, it had been fine 3 days ago. I tried Xavier's sedan. Also dead. The estate Land Rover. Nothing. Every single vehicle had been sabotaged. I stood there in the dim garage, surrounded by useless luxury cars, and felt the trap closing around me. They knew. They'd known since the night I broke the rule, and now they were making sure I couldn't escape. The estate was 30 minutes from the nearest town by car, surrounded by acres of private wooded land and gated entrances. I couldn't walk out, they'd find me before I made it half a mile. Calling a taxi would require explaining where I was, and any driver would have to come down the private drive, past the gatehouse, announcing my escape attempt to whoever was on duty. I went back into the house, unpacked my bag, and tried a different approach. The police. Surely I could call the police with what I'd found, show them the evidence on my phone. But when I picked up the landline in the library, there was no dial tone. The line was dead. When I tried my cell phone, there was no signal. None. I'd had full bars that morning when I'd checked the weather. Now, there was nothing. They'd blocked the cell service somehow, disabled the landlines, sabotaged the cars. I was trapped in a mansion with people planning to murder me, and they'd thought of everything. That night at dinner, Xavier was especially attentive. Too attentive. His hand kept finding mine across the table, his eyes constantly checking my face, his conversation full of references to our future together. When we take that trip to Tuscany next fall, he'd say. Or when we finally start a family, painting pictures of a future we both knew I'd never see. You seem tense, darling, he said, pouring wine. Red and expensive, probably worth more than my first car. Is something bothering you? He watched as I lifted the glass, pretended to sip, set it back down. You're not drinking, Vivien observed from across the table. She'd barely touched her own meal, too busy watching me like a hawk studying a mouse. Headache still, I said. Wine seems to make them worse. I probably shouldn't mix it with my medication anyway. Ah, yes, your medication. Vivien stood, walked to the sideboard, and returned with a small pill cup. My evening dose, which Dr. Pemberton had recently increased. 3 pills instead of the usual 2. I stared at them, recognizing the trap. If I refused, they'd know I was onto them. If I took them, I'd lose the clarity I needed to survive. I'll take them before bed, I said, reaching for the cup. Xavier's hand closed over mine, stopping me. Take them now, darling. We worry about you. These headaches, the memory issues, the anxiety, doctor. Pemberton says consistency is crucial for the medication to work properly. It wasn't a request. I looked around the dining room. Xavier on my left, Vivien directly across from me, the housekeeper clearing plates, the doors closed, no escape. No witnesses who would help even if I screamed. I picked up the pills, put them in my mouth, took a long drink of water, made a show of swallowing, smiled. There, Xavier said, satisfied. Better? I nodded, not trusting my voice. I excused myself as soon as I could, walking calmly to the bathroom even though I wanted to run. I locked the door and tried to make myself vomit, fingers down my throat, desperate to get the pills out before they dissolved. But I was too slow. I could already feel them taking effect, that familiar fog creeping in at the edges of my vision. They'd put something in the wine too, a backup plan in case I'd managed to palm the pills. The world started going soft and distant. I tried to stand to get to the bedroom, but my legs wouldn't work properly. I heard the bathroom door open had I forgotten to lock it. Xavier's face appeared above me, concerned and terrible. Easy, darling. Let's get you to bed. You've just tired yourself out. I tried to speak, to say I knew what they were doing, but my tongue wouldn't form words. He lifted me easily when had I gotten so light, and carried me to our bed. The last thing I remember clearly was his voice, soothing and monstrous, whispering, "Just rest, darling. Everything will be better soon. Just a few more weeks and all your worries will be over." Then, nothing. Darkness. Time disappearing into a fog I couldn't fight my way through. When I woke up, everything had changed. The lights were too bright, fluorescent and harsh, burning my eyes. I tried to lift my hand to shield them and felt resistance. Restraints. Soft restraints, the medical kind, holding my wrists to the bed rails. Panic surged through me, burning away some of the fog. Where was I? This wasn't our bedroom. The ceiling was white tile, not the ornate plasterwork of the estate. The air smelled wrong, antiseptic, and bleach, instead of the lavender sachets Vivien placed throughout the house. "Mrs. Ashford, can you hear me?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. I turned my head and saw a detective I'd never met sitting in a chair beside my bed. Tired eyes, cheap suit, notepad in hand. "I'm Detective Collins. I need to ask you some questions about what happened." "What?" My voice came out as a croak. My throat was raw, like I'd been screaming. Had I been screaming? Where am I? Greenwich Hospital. You were brought in 2 days ago. 2 days. I'd lost 2 days. "Mrs. Ashford, did you try to take your own life?" The question didn't make sense. I tried to shake my head, but the movement made the room spin. "No, I didn't. What are you talking about?" "You were found unconscious in your bathroom. Empty pill bottle beside you. There was a note on your phone." He pulled out a tablet, showed me a screenshot. Words in my voice, my phrasing, apologizing for being too weak to handle the pressures of my marriage, saying I couldn't live with the anxiety anymore. Goodbye. I didn't write that, I said, my voice getting stronger. I would never. They did this. They drugged me. They're trying to kill me. A woman in a white coat appeared on my other side. Dr. Henley, according to her badge. Mrs. Ashford, you've been under a tremendous amount of stress. Your husband and mother-in-law have explained your struggles with paranoid delusions, your resistance to treatment. You're safe here. We're going to help you. I'm not delusional. The restraints bit into my wrists as I tried to sit up. They killed 3 other women, Xavier's other wives. There's evidence in the West Wing, photos and files and medical records. Please, you have to listen to me. Collins exchanged a look with Dr. Henley that I recognized. The look people give each other when dealing with someone unstable. We've already been to your home, ma'am. Your husband gave us full access. There's no secret office, just storage rooms and family archives, like he said. That's impossible. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. Of course they'd cleaned it out. They'd had 2 days while I was unconscious. 2 days to remove the evidence, restore the rooms to innocent storage, erase any trace of what I'd found. No, I photographed everything. It's on my phone, in cloud storage. You can see, your phone was wiped, Collins said. Factory reset. Your husband said you'd done it yourself during your episode, destroying evidence of your delusions, and we checked your cloud accounts. Nothing there. They'd thought of everything. Of course they had. They'd been doing this for years, refining their process with each wife. I was just the latest in a series, and I'd been naive enough to think I was smarter than they were. Mrs. Ashford. Dr. Henley said gently, patronizingly, sometimes our minds create very convincing narratives to explain our pain. The medications you've been prescribed can help stabilize your mood, help you separate reality from, I know reality. I was shouting now, fighting against the restraints. My husband is trying to kill me. His mother is helping. They've done this before. Please, please, you have to believe me. A nurse appeared with a syringe. I'm sorry, Dr. Henley said, not sounding sorry at all. We need to calm you down. This will help you rest. I felt the needle pierce my arm, felt the chemical warmth spreading through my veins. No, I whispered as the world started fading again. Please, please listen. The last thing I saw before unconsciousness took me was Xavier standing in the doorway. He wasn't smiling anymore. He didn't need to. He'd already won. If this is making your blood boil right now, share this video. Someone you know might be in a controlling relationship and not even realize the danger they're in. And stay with me, because what happens next is how I went from being their victim to becoming the one who destroyed them. You need to hear this. When I woke the second time, I was somewhere worse, somewhere I recognized with creeping horror. Pemberton Wellness Center, the private psychiatric facility owned by Dr. Pemberton, the family doctor. Their ally. I was in enemy territory with no weapons, no evidence, and no one who believed me. For 3 days, I played their game. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Pretending to be defeated. Pretending to accept their narrative. Pretending that maybe, just maybe, I had imagined everything. I took the medications they gave me, or appeared to, perfecting the palm-and-cheek technique, forcing myself to vomit quietly in the bathroom afterward. I attended group therapy and nodded along to discussions about managing stress and paranoid thinking. I met with Dr. Pemberton and tearfully apologized for my episode, for the worry I'd caused, for being resistant to help. I accepted Xavier's daily visits, let him hold my hand and stroke my hair while staff members watched approvingly. I smiled when Vivien brought flowers, white roses from the estate gardens, of course. I was the model patient, improving, stabilizing, coming to accept reality. And all the while I was waiting, because I'd done one thing they didn't know about. Those delayed send emails I'd programmed, they'd been set to send 72 hours after I'd uploaded the evidence, regardless of whether I'd been captured or killed or committed. And that deadline was approaching. On my 4th day at Pemberton Wellness, during morning group therapy, the fire alarm went off. Staff immediately began evacuating patients toward the exits in neat, practiced lines. In the controlled chaos of bodies and noise and nurses calling out instructions, I saw someone I never expected, Isla, Xavier's sister. Standing by the side door, holding it open, eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw me, she gestured frantically. I didn't hesitate. I broke from the line and ran. Behind me, I heard someone shout my name, Dr. Pemberton, I think, but I was already through the door, Isla grabbing my arm and pulling me toward a car I didn't recognize. Get in, now! Her voice was shaking but determined. I dove into the passenger seat and she was already moving, pulling out of the parking lot with enough speed to make the tires squeal. We were 3 miles down the road before either of us could speak. How did you... I couldn't finish the sentence. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Your email, Isla said, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice was steady. I got your email 3 days ago. The evidence you found. Everything. Oh God, Mallory, I'm so sorry. I should have done something sooner. I should have warned you, helped you, anything except just watch like I did with the others. They killed them, I said. Not a question. Confirmation. Yes, and they were going to kill you too. I called someone, Detective Kira Ivanova. She's with the state police, not local. She can't be bought. I sent her everything you found. She's meeting us. Isla's voice cracked. I should have been brave enough to do this years ago. Maybe Simone, Zara, Odette. Maybe they'd still be alive if I hadn't been such a coward. We drove to a small house in a town I didn't recognize. A woman in her 50s answered the door, older than I remembered, but with the same frightened eyes. Claudia, the housekeeper they'd fired and paid off. When she saw me, she started crying. I'm so sorry, child. I tried to warn you. The way I looked at you, the things I tried to leave where you'd find them, but I was too afraid to speak out loud. They threatened my grandchildren. Said if I ever told anyone what I'd seen, my family would suffer. Tell me what you saw, I said, sitting across from her in her neat, modest living room. And she did. She told me everything. How she'd found Simone that final morning, gasping for air, pills scattered around her bed. How she'd started to call 911, but Vivien had appeared, calm and cold, and taken the phone from her hand. Family matter? Vivien had said, we'll handle this privately. How the family doctor had arrived instead of an ambulance, pronounced Simone dead, signed a death certificate without question. How the body was cremated within 2 days, no autopsy, no investigation. But I took photos, Claudia said quietly, before they cleaned the scene. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe someday. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photographs that would haunt me. Simone's body, the pills, the staged scene. Evidence of murder disguised as suicide. Detective Ivanova arrived an hour later. She was nothing like Colin's sharp-eyed, skeptical of easy answers, and visibly angry as she listened to our statements. She took my story, Isla's testimony, Claudia's evidence. She pulled out her phone and showed me that my cloud storage backup had survived they'd found and wiped my personal accounts. But not the dummy account I'd created under a fake name. Everything I'd photographed was still there. This won't be easy, she warned me. They have money, connections, lawyers. They'll fight this with everything they have. I don't care, I said. I want justice. For Simone, for Zara, for Odette, and for every woman they might target next if we don't stop them. The investigation took 6 months. 6 months of depositions and forensic accounting and court orders to exhume the bodies, what evidence remained after cremation. 6 months of living in a safe house under police protection while the state built their case. 6 months of watching the Ashford empire begin to crumble as journalists picked up the story, as other victims came forward, as the truth spread like wildfire through their carefully controlled world. The forensic evidence was damning. Even after cremation, bone samples showed toxicology evidence inconsistent with the official causes of death. Financial records revealed the insurance fraud $6 million collected, laundered through offshore accounts. Dr. Pemberton's files, seized with a warrant, showed he'd been prescribing dangerous medication combinations while documenting false symptoms. The medical examiner who'd signed the death certificates lost his license and faced criminal charges. Xavier was arrested at his pharmaceutical company's headquarters, let out in handcuffs while his board of directors watched in horror. Vivien was arrested at the estate, in her conservatory, surrounded by her roses and her memorial photographs. The family lawyer who'd facilitated the fraud, the doctor who'd prescribed the medications, the medical examiner who'd signed false reports, all charged as accomplices. The trial was everything I'd hoped for and dreaded. I had to sit in that courtroom and relive every moment, every lie, every manipulation, every time they drugged me and smiled while doing it. I had to watch Xavier sit at the defense table looking wronged and persecuted, still playing the victim even as the evidence mounted against him. But I also got to tell the truth, got to watch Isla testify against her family, her voice shaking but clear. Got to see Claudia finally speak without fear. Got to watch the jury's faces as they saw the photographs, heard the toxicology reports, understood the pattern. The prosecutor was brilliant. She laid it out methodically. The selection process, the isolation, the drugging, the gaslighting, the staging of deaths. The insurance fraud. This wasn't passion, she told the jury. This was premeditation. This was murder for profit, repeated and refined over 6 years. Xavier broke during cross-examination. When confronted with the financial records showing he'd personally collected and distributed the insurance payouts, he snapped. They were going to leave. His voice was cold with rage, all pretense of the grieving husband gone. Take money that belonged to my family, money they hadn't earned. We gave them everything, and they were going to abandon us, divorce us, destroy our reputation. So you killed them? The prosecutor asked quietly. Vivien hissed at him to shut up, but it was too late. The admission was on record. The jury had heard him confirm that he'd murdered 3 women rather than let them leave with a divorce settlement. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty, on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, forgery. The sentencing hearing was brief. Xavier got 3 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. So did Vivien. Dr. Pemberton got 25 years. The lawyer and medical examiner got 10 each. I was there for all of it. Watched them being led away in chains. Watched Vivien's perfect composure finally crack as she realized she'd die in prison. Watched Xavier turn and look at me one last time, his face full of cold rage that I'd survived, that I'd won, that I'd destroyed everything he'd built. I didn't look away. I met his eyes and let him see that I wasn't afraid anymore, wasn't broken, wasn't the victim he'd tried to make me. I walked out of that courtroom into sunshine and fresh air and freedom. Isla was waiting for me, and we held each other and cried for all of it, for what we'd survived, for what we'd lost, for the women who hadn't made it out. The Ashford estate was seized, sold to pay restitution to the families of the murdered women. I used my portion to start a foundation for domestic violence survivors, for women escaping dangerous situations, for anyone who needed help leaving, and proof that leaving was possible. I changed my name back to Mallory Winters, divorced Xavier with a single phone call to the prison, started rebuilding my life, this time on my own terms. The rule had been designed to keep me compliant, to keep me from discovering the truth, to keep me from saving myself. Breaking it didn't just save my life. It exposed a pattern of murder and brought justice to women who'd been forgotten, dismissed, erased. I learned something in that mansion that I'll never forget. Some rules exist to protect predators, not victims. The most dangerous thing isn't breaking those rules, it's trusting them when every instinct screams they're wrong. I was supposed to be wife number 4. Instead, I became the one who ended the count. And I'm still here, still fighting, still telling this story so that somewhere, someone else will recognize the pattern and break the rule that's designed to kill them. That's what survival looks like. Not pretty, not easy, but true. If this story affected you, I need you to do something right now. Share this video. Not for me, but for the woman who's being told she's crazy when she's actually being poisoned. For the person whose instincts are screaming danger, but everyone around them is saying they're paranoid. Someone watching this right now needs to know they're not alone, they're not imagining it, and escape is possible. My name is Mallory Winters, not Ashford, never again Ashford, and I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor who broke the rule and lived to burn their empire down. What rule do you need to break to save your life?